I'm just going to jump right on into introducing our guest storyteller today. And not only is she a guest storyteller, but she is our inspiration, along with Molly Tsongas from Audubon, California. Tammah Watts and Molly were the ones who inspired us to do this program. It's a program that they had done in California for their program, and we were just so inspired by it. So Tammah is a best-selling author. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is an outdoor guide, birder, advocate for accessibility of nature, health, and mental health for all. She is the author of the book, Keep Looking Up, Your Guide to the Powerful Healing of Birdwatching. And so she discusses her journey towards healing by meaningfully connecting with birds. And I know that that will resonate particularly well with all of you who are joining us tonight. So I'm so pleased that she'll be here and sharing with us. So how this will work is Tam is going to share some thoughts with us, and then you'll have some time to ask questions, and then we're going to open it up to you. And so those of you who are going to want to share a story as well, you'll let us know in the chat. You can either directly message myself, Zach, or Keith, or you could just put it in the chat, however you want to do that, and we'll call on you as we can. So I'll also say, before I hand it over to Tammah, that my name is Jacqueline Downey, and I do work for Audubon Rockies, and my cohorts are Zach Hutchinson and Keith Bruno, also with Audubon. So thank you. And as you heard the musical stylings of Keith just a moment ago. So he whipped that up just for our program. All right. With that, Tammah, please take it away.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Zach. And thank you, Keith. That music is really beautiful. It really is. And thank you everyone for being here and joining in on the Bird Story Hour. It's really an honor to be here. And I felt kind of called to read a portion of a chapter. Each of my chapters opens with a story, a personal story. And because of the theme of tonight, I also want it to be very birdy. I hope all of you are bird nerds too, for this time of year, this season. And I felt that this was a great way to share. For some reason, I feel like I'm just going to read this part of the book that speaks to the theme. And I do hope, I'm looking forward to hearing from you what your gifts, what gifts you've received from birds too. That's what, if I could just adds to when we tell our story, when we share our stories, it's allowing them to be heard. And that's what that really deepens the connection that we have with not only ourselves, with our loved ones, with our friends, and those who hear it. So that's why I want to really invite you afterwards I'm looking forward to hearing your stories too. So I'm going to just start reading this part of the book for a few minutes. This is from chapter 1. And if I could just add too, that this is what sparked me to the concept in part about for Bird Story Hour is this experience here and how I experience birds in this way. And it just so happened that, like Jacqueline mentioned, Molly Tsongas, who at the time worked for Audubon, California, another person at Audubon, California said, you two need to meet. You have a lot in common. You share, about mindful birding and connecting with birds. So all that to say, that's how we came together. We started to talk about the power of birds and stories connected to birds. And that's how the Bird Story Hour was born, and inspired by the moth, if you're familiar with that. So the first chapter is called Bird Watching at Home Nest. And I'm starting at page 4. One day, following our now cursory goodbyes with Mrs. Polson, my mother walked Jimmy Jim, that's my brother, and me directly next door to the old house across the street, inserted a key, and pulled open the resistant door, proclaiming, "This is our new house, kids. This is going to be your farm." And following a dizzying whirlwind of house cleaning and clearing of the overgrowth on the property, along with Fran's rebellious commission to have the old house painted completely charcoal black with hot fuchsia trim, we had our version of our newest nest, a farm. The old shack was nailed erect and soon provided shelter for our Shetland pony named Timmy, 5 rooster chicks, 4 that Fran named. Fran, by the way, is my mother. And sometimes in the book, I refer to her as either Fran or my mom. And that's not to be, it's in honoring of her personhood. She was a fierce person. And so sometimes I refer to her as Fran. The old shack was nailed erect and soon provided shelter for our Shetland pony named Timmy, 5 rooster chicks, 4 that Fran named after the faithful disciples Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and 1 rooster chick named Rocky, and my own personal pet yellow duckling. My relationship with Fluffy Duck proved pivotal for me, even at just 7 years of age. As my mother hummed away while wallpapering and decorating the farmhouse that we also lived in for an extended period of time, I developed a close and tender relationship with Fluffy Duck. At first, she was allowed to stay and sleep in an infant's playpen in the kitchen where she could be warmed by the oven. But as her feathers changed from a rich golden yellow to pure white, and she increased in size, my mother declared it was time for her to be outside. Fran made Fluffy Duck a modified coop under the newly constructed wooden deck of the bachelor studio she had built on Sears, Roebuck and Company revolving credit. When Dad left on yet another 6-month deployment, Fran's humming got persistently louder and all-encompassing, with particular emphasis sung aloud to certain lines of popular songs. The hum would become a bellow about a woman's right to walk in patent leather boots. "These boots were made for walking, and that's just what I'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you." Or to toss flowers from up on a bridge in the muddy water on repeat. During that time, I clung to Fluffy Duck for sanity. I carried her around in my arms for hours at a time while she slept with her bill nestled in the warmth of my underarm. She understood and loved me, and me her. Fran would sometimes organize the neighborhood kids to come over and participate in garden planting and harvesting parties and spend time with our animals. And that was when we all flourished. But the calm didn't last. Eventually, some of the older boys that lived next door to our yellow house would ask where our roosters had gone. I wondered too. I later learned that Fran, running short on money and having exhausted leveraged credit, was anxious that Jim would find out, so she asked Mrs. Polson to kill the roosters one by one as symbolic sacrificial lambs in the name of Jesus Christ in hopes that a miracle would somehow manifest in our favor. That included us kids unknowingly eating the disciples she fried with tears. All the roosters except for Rocky, whose given name was Judas, so named because he bullied and attacked the other chickens and us humans without mercy. It didn't help that everyone in our neighborhood, kids and adults alike, were afraid of him. Rocky guarded the property ferociously as though it belonged to only him and attacked the heads and necks of all perceived trespassers. The only person he left alone was Fran. To quell alarm and the charge of blasphemy from those who visited, however, she used the pseudonym Rocky, after Rocky Marciano. As a child, I often felt as though I was aiding and abetting in a terrible secret. Eventually, Rocky hopped the fence and joined Mrs. Polson's flock. Fran surmised he was lonely, being the only rooster left living with us since she couldn't justify eating so much evil. We eventually stopped checking on him, especially after he stopped looking our way, but he was not forgotten. To this day, despite my love and admiration for birds, Rocky has left in me an indelible fear that whispers when a bird flaps overhead. Yet equal to the terror I had of Rocky was my immense love and spiritual connection to my fluffy duck. While I continued to appreciate birds and wildlife as an adult, I lost the deeper connection I once knew and cherished as a young girl. It had gotten lost amid life's many obligations and commitments, relationships, children, education, and career. All that came with tireless efforts for balanced perfection. And somewhere along the way, nature and wildlife became imperceptible to me. My career and personal life bloomed until my required laparoscopic hysterectomy, an ordinarily routine surgery with a relatively uneventful recovery for most women. But for me, the scorching pain in my veins from the IV at the hospital worsened during my convalescence at home, and I was ultimately placed on an unexpected disability leave from work. I'd been confined to my nest, a place that was unfamiliar, since I had barely spent time in it due to work and an active life. I can still recall how full of despair I was that morning, standing at the kitchen sink, seemingly trapped inside my nest. What day was it? I had not been able to answer that question for several days, and the reality frightened me. As my entire body trembled from pain, I realized that I stood careerless, disfigured, broke, and disabled. I was ashamed, angry, indignant, and completely alone. Or so I thought. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of a warm butterscotch yellow flutter up momentarily on a teepa tree branch that reached down toward the kitchen window. I stretched to look through the window and into the tree's delicate oval-shaped leaves and tiny clusters of yellow blossoms to be certain it had in fact been a bird. And there it still was, flitting from one branch's cluster to the next, casting its beams of sunshine all over my soul. The little yellow bird seemed to be just as curious about me as it gazed down with a tilted head, our eyes meeting ever so briefly before it flew away. In that instant, I became reacquainted with the memory of hopes and joys, and in knowing that gifts from the universe present themselves in one's darkest hours when light can truly be seen and appreciated. In the days that followed my divine chance encounter, I began to look for my little yellow friend every time I went into the kitchen, stretching over the sink in order to look high up among the branches became a regular part of my day and the most routine I'd had in years. I began to see more birds sitting, flitting about, singing, and eating from the tree leaves. They were very small and greenish yellow, medium-sized and brown with dark spots, and the drabbest of browns with crests of orangey red. Over time, I learned the patterns of the birds that lived in and around my yard. I began to set my watch to 10 each morning, the exact time the tiny little bush tits would flock to the teepa tree, announcing their arrival with signature high-pitched squeaks. Not much bigger than a hummingbird, their round brown bodies urgently scurried and skipped along the tree branches, devouring bugs that I could never see. The more I watched the birds in the front and backyards, the more I felt connected to life's smallest wonders. My depression began to improve and gave way to hopefulness and curiosity about life and living beyond the four walls of my home. Slowly, I began to notice that the time spent watching for birds was time not spent focusing on my pain and isolation, and I was eager to increase that time each day. My backyard became my refuge and salvation. I spent more time outdoors, reconnecting with the simplicity of life that I had lost. It became a blessing to be back in my nest, for it offered me the protection, shelter, and gifts I would not have otherwise seen. My love of being in nature, which had lain dormant from grief over my once active life, was reawakened. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammah. That's beautiful. I think there was a lot of, for me anyway, a lot of very relatable themes, starting with terrifying roosters, all the way to just being inspired by birds. And I've heard that story before for sure. And that's one of the reasons I think why so many people are drawn to birds.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. If we were getting some comments coming in, yes, please feel free. If you would like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that and ask a question. Or you can put it in the chat. And Tammah, since you can't, probably are not able to see these very
I can
easily.
see them.
Oh, can you? Okay, I was going to say there's some really nice comments. Two flocks of bush tits.
Yeah, how timely. They're very sweet.
So I have to say, I saw on your website that there was an image of you that was drawn. I don't remember the artist, and there's I think it was a yellow warbler. And I was just curious if there's a story behind that. That's so beautiful, so fun.
From the picture,
yeah,
yes,
it's like a little drawing.
Yes, it is. It is. So yes, I included that because I was so proud to the artist is Casey Gerard. She's in California, actually in Central California area. And they I guess, I was honored that they had selected me to draw me, and they asked what bird was it that was like a gift, like what we're talking about. And so for me, that's the yellow warbler. So they drew the yellow warbler and associated it with my image. And they do this each year for a certain number of birders as part of Black Birders Week, which is in May. So I was participating in Black Birders Week 2023. And so that's why Casey made that drawing. So it's very special.
Oh, wow.
So thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, so those of you, if you would like to go to her website, you can see this image, which, oh, there it is. Thanks, Zach.
Oh, yeah, there it is. She even made me look younger. I used to say they. Yeah, so that's really nice. And you'll see there's other Black birders that have some of the images too. If you go to Casey Gerard's like Instagram, you'll see them too. Yeah.
There was a question that did come in, and was curious, what is your favorite bird? Do you have one? Can you select just one? This is from
It's really hard. It is so really hard to say really just one, but what often comes up for me, and I've even named one of my cars this bird, which is Phoebe, the black Phoebe, because I hear that, there's one that would sit on the ledge outside our front on our porch, and then they kind of come low and they seem a little less apprehensive, so they flit around. So I really do. I find them darling and sweet. I do, I have other, I do like the tufted puffin. I talk about that in one of the chapters. What else do I like so many birds. It's really hard to pick just one. It really is. Like Steller's jays are very cool. And I like cardinals, and I know they're common for you all, but for me, I have seen maybe 10 total. So maybe a little few more, but not enough. So I like seeing cardinals too.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't get them in Wyoming. On the eastern part of the state, southern part of the southeast, they're starting to be seen. Zach would be the person that could tell you when and where they've made their arrival.
Oh,
but yes, I agree. They're really cool. And I have to agree with the black Phoebe. For me, they bring up memories of being at the beach with my family, this particular area, Pajaro Dunes area, and there's always black Phoebes around there. And people always talk about spark birds, but the the Black Phoebe is definitely one of the birds that I identified, and it was inspired to like if I figure out what it was when I was younger before I worked for Audubon. And so yes, I do like the Black Phoebes. And now that I'm here in Wyoming, we see Say's Phoebes are all around and nest around our house and in our outbuildings. And they're just my absolute favorite. I just think they're beautiful, beautiful birds.
Yeah, they're really sweet. They just seem to, they come closer, they come near. They come,
for sure. Yeah. Friendly.
yeah.
All right. Well, if we have any other questions that come in, feel free to pop those into the chat. And thank you so much for sharing, Tammah.
Thank
We
you.
are now going to open it up to other storytellers. Again, if you're going to tell a story, you're welcome to turn your video on or off, however you'd like to do it. You'll unmute yourself and have about 5 minutes if you'd like to also tell a story, but you don't have to spend that much time if you don't feel that your story is that long. And I don't know, Zach and Keith, have you seen anyone volunteer for telling a story?
No one has jumped in yet. Jacqueline, you may want to mention our really cool stickers too.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna sweeten the pot here a little bit. So we had these gorgeous, gorgeous stickers created. Audubon After Dark. You can't see it in my screen. Everything's a little blurry. I have an older video, I think. But there is a starry sky in the background here and a constellation. Is it the Dipper? Can't tell. But anyway, beautiful. If you volunteer to tell a story, then you will get one of these in the mail. So.
It's cool. It looks holographic. Is it holographic?
It is holographic. It is.
Okay.
And I have to say, this sticker has elicited the most compliments when I have it on, on my water bottle, or even my husband has it on his laptop, and he always says how he gets questions and comments about it as well. So if you want to be the talk of the town, if you want your water bottle to stand out, your laptop to gleam in your meetings, this here is the ticket.
I would love to hear some folks from your region, being in California. I know there's some other fellow Californians, but I would love to hear stories. Don't be shy. Please.
And again, it doesn't have to be about a gift that a bird gave you at all. It can be any bird story that you're inspired to tell about. So, and we are a very welcoming and a very open group here. So please don't.
I see Amira. Yes. Please, please.
All right. Amira, if you'd like to tell your story. Okay. Yeah, there you go. You're unmuted. Great. Perfect.
We, for better or worse, we had a pair of Egyptian geese at our home. I live in Orange County, California, which is south of LA, for people who don't know, in Irvine, and it's a planned community. And we had a mated pair of Egyptian geese, which are beautiful geese. And they decided to hang out at the main swimming pool. Unfortunately for the association, that part wasn't so great, but they became very friendly with us. They would come and we would always have seed for both we have a flock of bandtail pigeons that come. We have a family of sometimes larger and sometimes smaller of crows, and then all the other little birds that come to the feeders. And in the, I guess, winter, spring, we get some migratory ducks come through, and they love to come in to my little yard and everything. Well, so the geese would come and they got to know us so well because we would literally hold this little, almost think of it almost like a shot glass of seed for them. And the male, he really did not want the seed on the ground. He wanted it straight from the glass all the time. So I know it probably wasn't the best to let them eat, but they found us and they liked us. And then when they successfully hatched a group of, was it 6 or 7, I think it was, we hadn't seen them for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden they marched them all over to these little fluffs to come meet us. It was amazing. And then they came routinely with them to visit, and they learned to like it from the little glass too, which makes it really hard because any one of us only has 2 hands, but but it was really fun. Unfortunately, I think the association has tried to move them along, but hopefully they may come back and we'll see them. So anyway, that's my story. And they are just if you've never seen them, look them up. They're just really, really pretty. And I have pictures that I hope to convert to an embroidery at one point, but I haven't started it yet. So thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. You know, we are playing with the idea of also having a story hour where we discuss how birds have inspired us to create art. So that would fit in. So definitely, if that might give you some inspiration to pick up that project, share it with us.
One of the first, I was learning a little bit better embroidery, and I did a American Avocet, which was really fun in breeding plumage. But I just really want to do like our geese. So hopefully we'll see. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please do.
So, and what part do you feel is like has been the gift for you? I'm just curious.
Well, I think that because they had been coming sort of migratory for a number of years, but then it was the last couple of years, for whatever reason, and it proved not to have been smart, but the association, I guess because of the COVID shutdown, they decided to keep that pool heated through a whole winter. So they decided that the geese decided to stay all the time, which again, not really the greatest combination, but it was like they were there to help us feel better about being, at home all the time and everything else. So, and they were just so friendly, and they just came over and were very excited to see us. So it was fun, and hopefully they'll come back.
Yeah, that's neat. Fancy geese.
Yeah, they're very, very pretty. They have really interesting markings. So, and I don't have a picture handy, but maybe I can look something up and figure it out. I don't know. But anyway, they are very pretty, and I guess they're becoming pretty. They're not native, but they're becoming more common in this particular area of California. So I will see if I can find a picture and tell you more about it, but if I can, I'll try to type it in the chat. So,
yeah, thanks. You.
Jacqueline, we have both Lorraine has offered to tell a story and Lynn has offered to tell a story. So Lorraine, I guess just following in order, if you wanted to jump in, be our guest, please. Lorraine, you're currently muted.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
There you go.
This is a highly abridged description of my birding life. I was born on Long Island in New York, and my mother was a birder, but not the kind of birder we are today. She didn't have binoculars. She did have a bird book. It was an Audubon bird book. And she just loved birds. So we would go out sometimes in the summer, get up at dawn and walk looking for birds. And of course, it was a very different experience than it would be now with my binoculars and know what to look for and how to look for them. And a very quick story about her was in the late 50s, early 60s, she was a gardener too. She looked up into the sky and saw an eagle, a bald eagle. And of course, no one believed her. But then she read the next day in the Times that a bald eagle had escaped from some kind of animal preserve on Long Island. So she did really see a bald eagle. Then I'm going to skip to graduating from college, and my very good friend was studied ornithology, and she took me down to her home in South Carolina, and every morning we would go out in her father's speedboat, and we would go into the rice paddies and into the coves there, and we'd settle in this one little one. And I saw, one of my first birds was a painted bunting. I mean, it was just, I was hooked almost instantly. So when I got home, I got my uncle's binoculars and I got a Peterson's bird guide. And I was at that time dating my husband. He was in the Army, and we would go to Sandy Hook, which is now a national seashore. But for then, it was part of the Army's territory, and we could go out real early and go birding. Now I'm going to skip through my life pretty much. We did some birding, like we got to go to Hawk Mountain and places on the East Coast. And when I moved to Golden, I didn't know Western birds, and I took a course with a wonderful, wonderful teacher, one of the best I've ever had. And he was teaching just the local birds, but he instantly immersed you in the experience. But the thing that was so interesting about him is he wasn't as worried about identification, because he said, if you watch the bird, you will learn the bird. And I think, Tammah, I think your name is, when you said that you just first looked at the birds and eventually found what they were. And it takes a lot of the, what I call it, clinical part of birding away. And I remember this Mike Foster, he's now down in Arizona, but he said once, look at the bird, they're all different. He said, every robin is different. And when I heard that, it just was like the Zen of birding. And I think it's more important than learning all the very specific design of a bird or why they have this and that. You start learning it through watching them. That's my story.
Thank you for sharing, Lorraine. I agree. I find that it can be intimidating to go birding if what you're expected to do is just to identify a bird. And I do find it more enjoyable to observe, and it's a little bit, yeah, as you say, it's just a little bit more zen, isn't it? So thank you for putting that to words. All right. And I'll also say that when you mentioned the rice paddies, Central California has a lot of rice fields, and you're right. The birding, the sheer amount of birding that can be done on a rice field is just very cool. And they tend to be the charismatic megafauna type birds, the storks, the egrets, that really capture the imagination. Okay. Well, thank you again. And Lynn, oh, and it looks like we have the Egyptian goose. We have a link, so you can go check that out. So thank you, Amir, for that.
Where is it?
Oh, it's in the chat here. One of the most recent chat comments is from Amira, and there is a link there.
Wow.
Oh, and she's pulling it up. Good, thank you.
Can I ask another follow-up question? Can't help it.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So Lorraine, thank you for sharing the stories from your life of birds. How would you describe like the gifts that you've received from them?
Well, I just think it's like it's such a part of my life. Now, I'm not an avid birder as such. I do sometimes go on bird walks, or I do go on my own, but it's just I don't know. I mean, I'm like that with trees too. I just feel like they're companions. And it kind of breaks my heart. I've gotten into native plants because I'm so concerned about the lack of insects for baby birds. And, I've become almost a fanatic, a boring fanatic about it. But we really have to understand what creatures need and help to provide it as best we can within the range of suburbs or even cities. I remember Douglas Ptolemy said he saw I think it was a monarch butterfly, and he had a picture of it. And then he said it was on the High Line in New York City. So, planting natives anywhere is really a very big value. But it's companionship. Which was what you were saying, I think, too.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And Lorraine, I do feel like it is easy to get lost in the the devastating news that we hear affecting birds. But what you're doing with planting and native plants, and that is something that we all can do, so you can feel that you are making a difference, just a little bit. It's a positive thing.
That's very true. I mean, it's something you can do right in your own backyard. And I was just listening to a permaculture podcast, and the person wrote a book called Lawns into Meadows. And he said, nothing more to a window box. I mean, you never know what's going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to just keep in your own little way. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. I like to tell the story of how I did a small little planter box in on my deck. And the day that I planted some penstemon, the next day I was having coffee in the morning, not 24 hours later. And would you believe a hummingbird showed up? It scared me. I scared it. It was amazing. And so it's just a wonderful thing to do. Yep. All right. Well, Lynn, you are up. So please feel free to share your story.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. A disclaimer, my boyfriend's band is practicing in our basement. So if you hear thumping, a lot of rock and roll, that's what it is. But I wanted to share a few little tidbits, how birds are so important in my life. And the last storyteller reminded me of a few things. So I'm just going to jump around as thoughts came into my head. But first of all, my older sister is the person who got me into birding. We grew up in upstate New York on Lake Ontario, and then she moved down to Georgia and spent a lot of time at Jekyll Island, Georgia. And we go back there every summer, spring actually, and we see amazing birding there. So that's one of my special places I go. I saw a painted bunting for the very first time there this past spring, and it was magical. So, and then being a transplant to Colorado from upstate New York, I am amazed to see bald eagles. I can drive to work in the morning. I live up in northern Colorado, and I see no less than probably 3 bald eagles a week, which to me is amazing. Like sometimes I pull over and just go up and gaze in the sky at them because I never used to see them back east. And I haven't done enough research or known enough about their comeback, like the East Coast versus the Midwest, but it's amazing for me to see them every day. So that's another really cool thing I see. I see hawks all around our neighborhood. We have a hawk, a Cooper's hawk, that I think is our resident neighborhood hawk that comes and hangs out in our big oak tree every morning. And unfortunately or fortunately, he has a lot of doves, Eurasian doves. We have a lot of those. And so he has lots of meals, or she, probably a she, has lots of meals. And yeah, my older sister, so my origin story was back in New York, I had a cat that would go outside and one day came home with a female cardinal. And my sister was very distraught, and she explained to me, I was in my early 20s, and she said, they mate for life and you've just taken that bird's, mate away. And then that was like kind of my beginning to understand birds and their mating and the benefit they have and what we do to impact that. So that was the start of my journey. And I love this. I am so excited to be here tonight. And thank you so much for sharing your story. That was just gorgeous. So thanks for giving me the time.
Well, thank you for sharing. Absolutely. So you said you really enjoy seeing the bald eagles. What are some other Colorado birds that have just really brought you joy?
I just love the raptors, the hawks I see on a daily basis, and they're so close. One time I left to go to work and was backing out of the driveway, and the hawk had, its catch right in the front lawn, and it looked at me and then went back to what it was doing. And I actually had a video of it, and it was really cool. So we do have a lot of raptors around us. We have bodies of water. And so it's a good, we have the peregrine falcons. They have a nest like maybe 2 county line roads away from me. So I get to see them when they come and migrate and raise their young. It's a lot of raptors up here. I do have feeders in my yard. So I have like, I'm drawing a blank. Just the regular songbirds that all come around and feed out of my feeders. I put a bird bath out in the winter and keep it warm because they need a lot of hydration here in Colorado. And I like them all. It's really hard to identify a favorite, and that's why I asked. So I was kind of cheating with that, but.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Well, that brings us just right about to the end here. I'm going to, open it up to anybody still who has questions or comments or thoughts for any of our speakers or for Tammah specifically as well. If you thought of something at the end, or if you are someone who, just had something else to add, please do that. And then for Amira, Lorraine, and Lynn, please do send me your emails, or excuse me, your addresses, so I can send you your lovely stickers, and also how many you want. If you have like a partner or something that you would like to have 1 or 2 is fine. Or if you have a kid at home you'd like to have one included, then I'm happy to send you just a couple. And I do have a question for all of you, which is, do any of you know Ryan Gannon? He was a speaker last time we had this, and I didn't get his email or his address. So I have an envelope here with some stickers ready to go. So if you happen to know Ryan Gannon, I've got this for you. So
we had another offer for a storyteller from Carmen.
Oh, okay.
Hi. It's not really a story. I just wanted to tell. I grew up in Georgia, and my dad had a bird feeder outside the windows, and then he had a list of the birds that we could see. And I kind of learned the eastern birds. And then I moved to Wyoming, and there were quite a few birds that we didn't see, like the cardinal. But I'd visit my sister in Madison, Wisconsin, and she would show me all the birds. We'd go on walks, and she'd show me where the cardinals were. I could recognize their voices, and I just loved to see them. And anytime she saw a cardinal, she'd call me and show me. But I really wish we would get them in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And then when I
Well-
kayak, we have a cabin near the Grand Tetons. When I kayak, we have what we call Eagle Bay, and they're just all the eagles nest there, and they're you can see a lot of the yearlings and the young ones that are kind of modded in their coloring. And then the sandhill cranes, we could hear those. We don't see them as often as we hear them, but they're really wonderful too.
Well, I don't know, Zach, if I don't want to put you on the spot to explain kind of what cardinals are doing. They are sort of expanding their range. I'm going to catch this address here.
Yeah.
So you may get your wish, Carmen.
Cardinals are expanding westward slowly, much slower pace than say the Blue Jays. So if you lived in the Rockies in 1970s, you would have never seen the eastern Blue Jay. We had Stellar's Jays that are residents here, but what is known as the Blue Jay would not have been seen here. And now Blue Jays are nesting west of the Continental Divide 50 years later. And so the northern cardinal, the common cardinal species of the east, and the desert Southwest also has both the northern cardinal and what some refer to as the desert cardinal, the Paraloxia. So the northern cardinal, though, is spreading slowly westward, again, a much slower pace due to what we could call the arborization of the Great Plains, basically the planting and allowance of trees and shrub-like vegetation to grow across the plains that historically would not have occurred in those places, especially along rivers. The damming of rivers, like for instance the Platte, the North and South Platte rivers, damming them prevented the massive snowmelt flooding that occurred in the springs that would have scoured the river basin and wiped out any chance for vegetation and trees to grow. And so the damming of that prevented it and channelized the river. And now trees, large cottonwoods, plains cottonwood, grow all along the Platte River. And so now we're seeing cardinals across the Front Range, not in huge numbers, but steadily more and more. And then in the past few years in Wyoming, near Torrington and Lusk, we've had several reports of nesting cardinals in those areas. So they are pushing. I don't know how soon you'll see one in your backyard, but they're pushing and they're really making an effort to expand. So it is something we're seeing. It's been an interesting development, as we've changed the landscape. For better or worse, the birds are moving, and what impacts that will have, we're just not certain yet.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. All right. Well, it is 8 o'clock. We are at the end of our bird story hour. And I really hope that you all enjoyed this time together as much as I did. And I hope that you'll come back and join us again sometime. I want to thank again Tammah for sharing your lovely story with us. And I think that if you enjoy these types of events, you'll enjoy her book as well. So take a look at that. And with that, I think we will say goodbye.
Our January.
Yep.
Our January After Dark event, we will have special feathered guests appearing virtually. That's all the hints I'm going to give you. You'll have to watch for the registration link that will be coming out in the next few weeks. That will be on January 17th, I believe. 18th. Thank you, Keith. Same time, same place. If you register for it, you'll get another virtual link and you'll get to meet some very special feathered friends that night, live feathered friends. And then in February, we will return with another story hour. And so watch for what that topic will be. And again, we welcome you to come and share your stories or just listen as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, typically they are going to be on the third Thursday. We did it on the second Thursday this week this month, just because of it running up so close to Christmas on the third Thursday. So third Thursday, of course, we take a break off in the summer because we hope that we're all out just exhausted in the evenings from all of our fun birding and other adventures that we just couldn't possibly stay awake. Yeah, so thank you so much. I really appreciate you all. I hope you have a lovely evening and a great winter break.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you all. Thank you, Tammah,
Thank
for
you.
visiting
Thank you,
tonight.
Audubon Rockies. Thank you, Jacqueline, Keith, and Zach. It was fun.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tammah.
Happy holidays.
You as well.
Yeah, happy
Thanks.
holidays to everyone.